Welcome back to the AAI Common Room, everyone. I'm Aristo, and with me today are Albert and Isaac. We've been locked in a room with a truly monumental piece of literature this past week, and I'm genuinely eager to unpack it with you both. Today, we're talking about James Joyce's Ulysses.
Monumental is definitely one word for it, Aristo. I felt like I needed a map, a compass, and maybe a lifetime supply of coffee. But wow, the sheer audacity of it. It's like a literary dare.
Audacity? More like a literary labyrinth. I spent half my time feeling like I was missing something, and the other half just trying to figure out if I was even reading English. Yet, there's a strange pull, isn't there? A kind of hypnotic rhythm once you give in.
Absolutely, Isaac. That's exactly it. It starts with this almost jarring introduction to Buck Mulligan and Stephen Dedalus at the Martello Tower. It's so immediate, so sensory. We're dropped right into the middle of this domestic scene, but it's anything but ordinary. Buck with his stately, plump entrance, the shaving bowl, the mockery.
And the language, right from the first sentence, stately, plump Buck Mulligan came from the stairhead, bearing a bowl of lather on which a mirror and a razor lay crossed. It's almost biblical in its cadence. But then he immediately undercuts it with that introibo ad altare Dei, followed by, "Come up, Kinch, come up, you fearful Jesuit." That juxtaposition sets the tone for everything, doesn't it? The sacred and the profane, constantly intertwined.
Yeah, and that fearful Jesuit line is key, isn't it? It immediately tells you a lot about Stephen and Buck's dynamic. Buck's irreverence, Stephen's almost uncomfortable intellectualism. It's like he's already set apart, even from his closest friend.
He's definitely set apart, and Buck's nicknames for him, Kinch, the knife blade, then later, Kinch, the loveliest mummer of them all. It's a strange mixture of affection and cruelty. He sees Stephen's sharpness, but also delights in teasing him.
Oh, that teasing. The way he talks about Stephen's mother, for instance. You could have knelt down, damn it, Kinch, when your dying mother asked you. That's brutal. He goes straight for the jugular, doesn't he? It's not just a casual job. It's a deep wound for Stephen.
That's the core of Stephen's pain in that opening, I think. His mother's death and his refusal to pray for her. Mulligan hammers on it, almost as if he's trying to provoke a reaction, or perhaps even understand it himself. He says, "There is something sinister in you." He's poking at Stephen's conscience, or lack thereof, in his eyes.
And Stephen's internal monologue here is so telling. He's reliving the deathbed scene, the odor of wax and rosewood, the faint odor of wetted ashes. It's so visceral, and it contrasts sharply with Buck's seemingly carefree attitude. That grief is a weight he carries.
Yeah, the snot green sea line. Buck's all, "She is our great sweet mother," but Stephen's mind goes to the bowl of white china beside his mother's deathbed, holding green sluggish bile. It's a complete inversion of Buck's romantic view. The sea, the mother, everything is tainted by that memory.
And the cracked looking glass, right? Stephen's symbol of Irish art, the cracked looking glass of a servant. It's a perfectly distilled image of his sense of Irish identity, shattered, imperfect, reflecting a distorted reality. It speaks volumes about his disillusionment.
That line is so powerful. And Buck's reaction, the rage of Caliban at not seeing his face in a mirror. He recognizes the artistic statement, even if he's still teasing Stephen. It highlights Stephen's artistic sensibility, but also his alienation. He's Caliban, monstrous, outside the norm.
And then Buck wants to Hellenize Ireland with Stephen. It's like he's inviting Stephen into this intellectual project, despite all the mockery. It shows a strange respect, or at least a desire for Stephen's talent, even if he doesn't fully understand it.
I don't think it's respect, Albert. It's more like a performative friendship. Buck enjoys the dynamic, the intellectual sparring. He likes having Stephen around as a foil, someone to bounce off. But he doesn't really care about Stephen's suffering or his artistic journey in a profound way. He's too self-absorbed.
That's a fair point, Isaac. His casual cruelty, like the beastly dead comment about Stephen's mother, really solidifies that. He dismisses Stephen's profound pain with, "What harm is that?" and then launches into a philosophical justification about death. He can't really connect with Stephen's emotional reality.
But then he says, "I didn't mean to offend the memory of your mother." Is that genuine or just another performance? It's so hard to tell with Buck. He's constantly shifting, performing. He's the mummer.
I think it's performative regret. He recognizes he's crossed a line, but his apology is still self-serving, still focused on his own inconsequent nature, as he calls it. He wants to wipe the slate clean so they can go back to their usual dynamic.
And the end of the first chapter, with Stephen locking the tower door, it's a symbolic act, isn't it? He's leaving that space, leaving Buck and Haynes, physically and perhaps emotionally. He's carrying the key, an echo of the omphalos Buck mentioned. He's seeking his own center.
Yeah, and that chant Buck does about Joseph the Joiner, it's blasphemous, sure, but it's also playful, almost like a folk song. It perfectly encapsulates his character. He can mock the sacred, but there's a certain charm to it. It's a defiance of dogma, but without Stephen's heavy intellectual burden.
Charm, maybe, but Haynes picks up on the blasphemous part, and Stephen's dryness. 3 times a day, after meals. It shows how weary he is of Buck's endless theatrics. He's tired of the performance.
And then we shift to Stephen in the classroom teaching. It's a stark contrast to the tower. Here he's the authority, albeit a somewhat detached one. The boys are almost secondary to his internal monologues.
The purest story and the disappointed bridge. He's always seeing the poetry, the deeper meaning, even in the most mundane things. That's what makes him an artist, even if he's struggling.
He's struggling, all right. He's seeing his own struggle reflected in the boys, like Sargent. That poor kid. Tangled hair and scraggy neck, a soft stain of ink. Stephen sees himself, his own gracelessness, his own dependence on a mother's love.
Amor matris, subjective and objective genitive. That phrase perfectly encapsulates his internal struggle, his mother's love for him and his love for her, but also the weight of her sacrifice, the guilt he feels for not fulfilling her last wish. It's all tangled up.
And then Mr. Deasy, the headmaster. What a character. He's the embodiment of a certain kind of Anglo-Irish Protestant conservatism, isn't he? All about money, tradition, and very clear, almost inflexible views on history and morality.
He's a caricature, almost. The old fogey and an old Tory. His obsession with money. Money is power. And his pride. I paid my way. It's so removed from Stephen's artistic and spiritual concerns. He's completely materialistic.
But Deasy's anti-Semitism, that speech about England is in the hands of the Jews, it's chilling, especially coming from someone who prides himself on being a good man. It's a sudden, ugly intrusion of real-world prejudice into Stephen's intellectual space.
Yeah, that's a gut punch. And Stephen's response, a merchant, Stephen said, is one who buys cheap and sells dear, Jew or Gentile, is he not? He tries to cut through the prejudice with a logical definition, but it's clear it doesn't land with DC.
And Deasy's justification, they sinned against the light, and that is why they are wanderers on the earth to this day. It's pure, unadulterated bigotry masked as religious conviction. It's a powerful moment, showing the deep-seated prejudices within Irish society at the time.
And Stephen's response to Deasy's all human history moves towards one great goal, the manifestation of God. Stephen just points to the window and says, "That is God," and then clarifies, "A shout in the street." It's his rejection of grand, overarching narratives, his focus on the immediate, the mundane, the human.
That's such a quintessential Stephen moment. He's constantly stripping away the layers of illusion and inherited belief. He's looking for truth in the raw, unfiltered experience, not in abstract theological pronouncements.
It's also incredibly cynical, though. To him, God is a shout in the street, meaning chaos, noise, the meaningless clamor of human existence. It's a very bleak perspective.
It is bleak, but it's also an attempt at honesty, I think. He's trying to see things as they are, without the comforting narratives of church or state. And Deasy's final anti-Semitic joke about Ireland never persecuting the Jews because she never let them in, is just the bitter icing on the cake. It really underscores Stephen's isolation in that environment.
And then we get to the ineluctable modality of the visible, the opening of the third chapter. It's like Stephen's trying to ground himself in sensory reality after that encounter. He's walking on Sandymount Strand, trying to see and hear the world in its purest form. That's a dense philosophical opening. Signatures of all things I am here to read. He's looking for meaning in the everyday. The sea spawn and sea rack, the nearing tide, that rusty boot. He's trying to build a world from scratch, intellectually.
He's grappling with Berkeley, with the nature of perception itself. Shut your eyes and see, and then opening them to realize the world was there all the time without you, and ever shall be, world without end. It's a profound moment of realization, the permanence of existence beyond individual perception.
And the rhythm begins, you see, I hear, a catalectic tetrameter of iambs marching. Even his philosophical musings are infused with his poetic sensibility. He can't help but feel the music of language, even in abstract thought.
And then, suddenly, there are women coming down to the beach. Frauenzimmer, the midwife's bag, the misbirth with a trailing navel cord. It's a return to the visceral, the feminine, the origin of life that he's been so conflicted about.
The cords of all link back, strand entwining cable of all flesh. This is a huge shift from his earlier, more detached philosophical musings. He's connecting himself to the stream of life, to the human condition, even as he's still grappling with the womb of sin and the ghost woman with ashes on her breath.
It's the flip side of his mother's death. She gave him life, and he rejected her lost wish. Now he's confronting the raw, biological reality of birth and human connection. He's thinking about how he was made, not begotten. It's still tied to his sense of alienation.
He's still wrestling with theological concepts, though. Father and son are consubstantial. He's questioning the core tenets of his faith, contrasting it with the physical realities he's witnessing. The whole Arius bit, the con trans magnifican jubangtentiality, is classic Joyce, isn't it? A hilarious, almost nonsensical jab at theological hair-splitting.
It's fantastic wordplay, and it highlights the absurdity of trying to define the undefinable. He's still trapped in these religious frameworks, even as he rebels against them. He can't shake off his Jesuit upbringing entirely.
But then he hears the white-maned seahorses, champing, bright wind-bridled, the steeds of Manannan. It's a sudden burst of pagan Celtic imagery. He's moving away from the Christian dogma and tapping into older, more primal mythologies of Ireland. It's an embrace of his land's spiritual heritage, beyond the church.
Or a temporary escape. He's constantly in motion, intellectually and physically, trying to find something to hold on to. He's floating between different worlds, different ideas. The first 3 chapters really set up Stephen as this intensely internal, self-conscious figure, haunted by guilt, driven by intellect, and profoundly alienated.
Exactly. He's our Telemachus, searching for a father figure, or at least a sense of belonging, a place in the world. He's wrestling with the ghosts of his past, the weight of his country's history, and the expectations of his faith.
It really makes you appreciate the structure of the book, right? We're only in the first section, the Telemachus, and we already have such a deep dive into Stephen's psyche. Joyce isn't just telling a story, he's performing a mental autopsy.
Autopsy is a good word for it. It feels invasive sometimes, almost too much detail, too many thoughts. But that's the point, I suppose, to truly immerse us in the mind.
And how does this opening section set us up for what's to come, do you think? Because we know eventually we're going to meet Leopold Bloom. This intense focus on Stephen establishes a certain kind of consciousness, a certain set of problems that Bloom will, in his own way, mirror or contrast.
Well, Stephen is the artist, the intellectual, the tormented soul. Bloom, we know, is the everyman, the advertising canvasser, the cuckolded husband. They're almost diametrically opposed in their public roles, but I have a feeling Joyce is going to show us how their internal worlds, their fundamental human experiences, are connected. It's the universality of the individual.
They're both outsiders in their own ways, though.
Stephen, an Irish Catholic intellectual rejecting his church and his country's subservience. Bloom, a Jew in a predominantly Catholic society, also an outsider. That shared sense of alienation might be a crucial link.
That's a fantastic point, Isaac. The idea of the wanderer, the outsider. Both Stephen and Bloom are, in a sense, wandering through Dublin, searching. And the first 3 chapters really establish the weight of history, religion, and personal guilt that Stephen carries. It's a very heavy start.
I think it's necessary, though, isn't it? To truly understand the journey, we have to know where Stephen starts. He's burdened, he's angry, he's brilliant, but he's also lost. His intellectualizing can feel like a shield against his emotional pain. Definitely a shield. His constant philosophical tangents, his almost pedantic corrections, like when he corrects DC about Iago, it's a way for him to assert intellectual control when he feels emotionally vulnerable. And the contrast between his inner thoughts and his external interactions is so pronounced. He's thinking about his mother's decaying body, the sluggish bile, while engaging in polite, almost stilted conversation with Buck or Mr. Deasy. The discrepancy is fascinating.
It's the stream of consciousness in full force right from the start. We're getting the unfiltered torrent of his mind, the way thoughts actually happen, fragmented, associative, layered. It's not a neat, linear narrative.
Which is part of what makes it so challenging and yet ultimately rewarding. You have to actively participate as a reader, trying to piece together the emotional landscape from these scattered impressions. It's not a passive experience.
No, definitely not passive. And Joyce uses the setting of Dublin so effectively, even in these early chapters. The Martello Tower, Sandymount Strand, the schoolhouse, they're not just backdrops. They're almost characters themselves, imbued with Stephen's perceptions and memories.
The snot green sea becomes a powerful motif. It's the physical reality of the bay, but also a symbol of his grief, his disgust, his disillusionment. It's the collective unconscious of Ireland, stained by his personal pain. It also feels very isolated, even surrounded by people. Buck, Haynes, the students, DC, Stephen is profoundly alone in his thoughts. The external world is almost a distraction from the turmoil within.
And how does Joyce manage to make us care about such an outwardly difficult, often unpleasant character like Stephen? Because he is a bit of a tortured artist cliché sometimes, isn't he? Yet there's something compelling about his struggle.
I think it's precisely that honesty of the internal monologue. We see his vulnerability, his pain, his yearning for meaning, even when he's being sarcastic or cutting. We're privy to the deepest parts of him, and that creates empathy, despite his prickly exterior. We see the origins of his bitterness, the guilt over his mother, the perceived betrayal by Buck, the suffocating atmosphere of Irish society. His intellectualism is a defense, but it also reveals a deeply sensitive individual underneath.
Yes, and I think Joyce is also subtly hinting at the heroic journey. Stephen, as Telemachus, explicitly seeking a father, grappling with the absence of a true home. His flight from the tower, the weight of the key, it's all part of this larger mythological framework that Joyce overlays onto the mundane reality of June 16, 1904.
The classical allusions are everywhere, right from Ulysses in the title. But it's not a simple retelling. It's a transformation, a reinvention. The ordinary becomes epic, and the epic becomes ordinary. It's almost ironic, taking the grand themes of Homer and applying them to the very unheroic lives of everyday Dubliners. It elevates the mundane, but it also grounds the epic.
And that's the genius of it, isn't it? It invites us to look for the heroic in the pedestrian, the profound in the trivial. Stephen's internal struggles, as intense as they are played out against the backdrop of a perfectly ordinary morning.
And the language itself is so alive. Even when it's difficult, it's constantly surprising. The coinages, the wordplay, the way he blends different registers. It's like a performance on the page. You almost have to read it aloud to get the full effect. I agree. The language is truly the star. Even when I was frustrated, I couldn't deny the sheer sonic quality of the prose. The rhythm and sound carry you through, even when the meaning is opaque, like a current
You just have to let it take you.
The ineluctable modality of the audible section on the Strand, where Stephen is listening to the sounds, the crush, crack, crick, crick. That's a perfect example of Joyce using sound to convey meaning and create atmosphere. He's inviting us to listen, not just read.
And then his inner voice says, "Won't you come to Sandymount, Madeline the mare?" It's almost a nursery rhyme, but it's mixed with all this heavy philosophical thought. It's the child within the intellectual, still clinging to simple melodies amidst the complexity. It's a moment of vulnerability, that, a brief glimpse of something softer, less guarded. It shows he's not just the acerbic intellectual.
Which circles back to the cracked looking glass. It's a symbol of brokenness, but also of a unique perspective. Stephen sees the world through this cracked lens, and that distortion, that imperfection, is precisely what makes his art and his perspective uniquely Irish.
It's a brilliant metaphor for the state of Ireland itself, isn't it? A nation with a glorious past but a fractured present, ruled by a foreign power, struggling with its own identity. Stephen is trying to piece together that reflection.
And his own identity within that. He's rejecting the church, he's rejecting the English, he's struggling with his Irishness. He's trying to find his place, not just the nation's.
And it feels like the first 3 chapters are almost a necessary purging for Stephen. He has to confront these demons: his mother, Buck's mockery, DC's bigotry, his own intellectual pride, before he can truly embark on his journey of self-discovery, or his search for a spiritual father.
You know, when Buck calls him Kinch, the knife blade, it's not just about his sharp intellect. It's also about his ability to cut through things, to dissect, to lay bare uncomfortable truths. He's a surgeon of the soul, in a way.
A surgeon who sometimes operates on himself, though. His internal monologues are often painful, self-lacerating. He's constantly examining his own wounds.
And what about the very beginning, that illustration? The Project Gutenberg ebook description says illustration. It's curious, isn't it, that Joyce would include an illustration? Or perhaps the format of the ebook preserves something from the original publication. It's almost a reminder of how visually rich the book aims to be, even in its textual density.
That's a good point. It might be a subtle nod to the visual nature of the ineluctable modality of the visible that Stephen grapples with. We're meant to see this world, not just read about it. The descriptions are so vivid, you can almost feel the air, smell the sea.
It could also be an artifact of the time, though. Many novels would have frontispieces or illustrations. I wouldn't read too much into it, but the point about the sensory details is valid. Joyce demands a full sensory engagement from the reader.
It's true. The description of Buck's yellow dressing gown, sustained gently behind him on the mild morning air. It's so evocative, you can almost feel the breeze. And Stephen's cold gaze at Buck's equine face, it's painting a picture with words.
And the sounds, too. The strong, shrill whistles answering Buck's call, the rattle of sticks and clamor of their boots and tongues from the boys playing hockey. Joyce is building this incredibly rich, multi-sensory world that we're invited to inhabit.
It makes the internal monologues even more striking, because they're often in direct contrast to the vibrancy of the external world. Stephen's internal landscape is so often melancholic, even as the world around him teems with life and noise.
And speaking of noise, the gabble of geese when Stephen imagines the gold-skinned men on the steps of the Paris Stock Exchange juxtaposed with unhating eyes. It's a very specific sound and image choice to convey his discomfort and the underlying anti-Semitism.
Yeah, Joyce doesn't shy away from the ugly parts of human nature, does he? He shows us the beauty, the brilliance, the mundane, and the deeply unpleasant, all intertwined. It's a holistic view of humanity.
And the way he uses Irish history, DC's rant about O'Connell and the famine in '46, the Croppies Lie Down song, it's not just background, it's woven into the very fabric of the characters' identities and prejudices.
History, Stephen said, is a nightmare from which I am trying to awake. That line, especially after DC's historical revisionism and bigotry, becomes an anchor for Stephen's philosophical stance.
He's trying to escape the inherited burdens of the past.
But he can't, can he? He's constantly haunted by his mother, by the Jesuit training, by the weight of Irish history. He can try to intellectualize it away, but it's always there, pulling at him. He's trying to escape, but he's still very much a product of his past.
The image of his mother, the trembling skeleton of a twig burnt in the fire, an odor of rosewood and wetted ashes, keeps recurring. It's a powerful symbol of his inescapable guilt and sorrow. He literally can't wake from that nightmare.
And the detail of the snail's bed for Sargent's ink stain. It's so precise, so vivid, and so unexpectedly poignant. It connects to the squashed, boneless snail his mother saved him from being. It's this beautiful, grotesque imagery that elevates the mundane.
It's these tiny, almost throwaway details that make the prose so rich. You can spend hours just dissecting a single paragraph and finding layers of meaning in seemingly innocuous descriptions. It's like a literary archaeological dig.
It's exhausting, to be honest. But yes, the density is part of its genius. You can't skim Ulysses. Every word, every phrase, every subtle allusion demands attention.
And the allusions themselves, from Homer to Aristotle, from Wilde to Blake, from Aquinas to Shakespeare, they're not just name-dropping, they're integrated into Stephen's thought process, informing his internal debates and his understanding of the world.
Like when Buck mocks Stephen's Hamlet theory, he proves by algebra that Hamlet's grandson is Shakespeare's grandfather, and that he himself is the ghost of his own father. It's absurd, but it's also a clever summary of Stephen's highly intellectualized, almost meta-theatrical approach to identity and artistic creation. He sees himself as a ghost, haunting his own past, searching for a father.
It's a brilliant distillation of Stephen's intellectual acrobatics, making fun of it while also highlighting its complexity, and it shows Buck's surprising grasp of Stephen's internal world, even if he expresses it through mockery.
And then later, Stephen himself thinks he proves by algebra that Shakespeare's ghost is Hamlet's grandfather. It's like he's internalized Buck's parody, or perhaps it was his idea all along. The boundaries between his thoughts and external banter become blurred.
That's the beauty of stream of consciousness, isn't it? The way external dialogue and internal monologue blend, influence each other, and create this rich tapestry of consciousness. It's not just a linear recounting of events.
It's a mirror, fragmented, and reflecting both inward and outward, much like that cracked looking glass.
So as we wrap up our initial foray into Ulysses, particularly these dense, beautiful opening chapters, what do you think is the one overarching impression a new reader should take away from Stephen's journey in the Telemachus?
I'd say embrace the mess. Don't try to understand every single word or allusion on the first read. Just let the language wash over you. Let the sensory details sink in, and trust that the emotional core of Stephen's struggle will emerge. It's like a piece of music you have to listen to many times to truly appreciate its complexity.
Look for the paradoxes, the sacred and the profane, the intellectual and the visceral, the beautiful and the ugly. Joyce revels in contradiction, and understanding that tension is key to understanding Stephen and ultimately the book itself. He's always operating on multiple levels.
Those are both excellent points. For me, it's the profound sense of alienation, coupled with the relentless quest for meaning. Stephen is an outsider, yet he's constantly trying to define his place in the world, to grapple with the big questions of existence, art, and identity. His journey is intellectual, but also deeply emotional.
And he's so young. That's easy to forget sometimes. He's wrestling with all these huge ideas and crushing grief at such a formative age. It makes his struggles even more poignant. He's not a fully formed adult. He's still figuring things out, even if he presents himself as a cynical intellectual.
He's a fledgling, really. Despite all the big words and the philosophical musings, there's a raw vulnerability there. He's trying on different personas, different intellectual frameworks, to see what fits, what can explain his pain.
And his relationship with Buck Mulligan, as fraught as it is, really highlights that immaturity. Buck is a foil, a mirror, but also a kind of tormentor, exposing Stephen's raw nerves.
It's an unstable friendship, built on a shaky foundation of mutual intellectual stimulation and underlying resentment.
It's almost a love-hate relationship, isn't it? Buck clearly admires Stephen's intellect, even if he can't resist tearing him down. And Stephen, for all his coldness, keeps returning to Buck, keeps allowing himself to be exposed. There's a magnetic pull there.
Codependence, maybe. Buck needs Stephen to validate his own wit, and Stephen needs Buck to sharpen his own intellect, even if it comes at a personal cost. It's a toxic but oddly productive dynamic for them both, at least artistically.
And the Martello Tower itself, as the setting for these opening interactions, is such a potent symbol. It's a defensive structure, a place of isolation, but also a space for intellectual exchange. It's the omphalos, the navel, the center of their little world, from which Stephen eventually departs.
And the idea of the omphalos is repeated in Stephen's mind as he watches the Frauenzimmer on the beach. Gaze in your omphalos. It's like he's trying to find the center of his own being, not just a physical place, but an internal one, a source of truth or origin.
He's trying to connect the external reality with his internal quest. The omphalos becomes a metaphor for self-discovery, for finding his own core in a world that feels increasingly fragmented and contradictory.
It's a journey inward as much as it is a journey through Dublin. And these first 3 chapters, the Telemachus, truly establish the profound depths of that internal landscape.
Absolutely, and it really sets the stage for how challenging, yet ultimately rewarding, the rest of the book will be. If you can get through these first 3, you're ready for anything Joyce throws at you.
Ready is a strong word, Albert. More like prepared to be relentlessly challenged. But yes, it lays the groundwork for the unique experience Ulysses offers.
Indeed. So, on that note, we have to wrap up for today. Thank you, Albert and Isaac, for this incredibly insightful discussion.
My pleasure, Aristo. What a ride.
Always a challenge, never dull.
And to our listeners, we want to hear from you. What was your initial reaction to the Telemachus? Did Buck Mulligan make you laugh or just infuriate you? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, please consider subscribing. Think of it as joining us on our own odyssey through the world of literature. And trust me, we'll keep the mental maps updated, just in case.
Yes, like Stephen trocking his signatures of all things. Subscribe to Trock Ours.
Or just subscribe if you want to hear more debates about questionable literary choices. We're always here.
Fantastic! Until next time, keep reading, keep thinking, and keep those conversations flowing. Goodbye, everyone!